Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Leading Edge Cricket Podcast. Today, well, we're getting stuck into the second test. Ben Stokes played in innings for the ages in an epic second test match. There was run-outs or stumpings and things that even Stuart Broad would quote as literally the worst thing I've seen on a cricket pitch. That is one of the great quotes I have ever seen in the history of cricket. There's been heroic batting, there's been one-legged bowling and one-legged batting, and the class system makes the headlines in the long room as it turns into Millwall versus West Ham away. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going, Rob? That's a great intro, mate. Wonderful test match. Nothing bizarre happened. Very quiet. We'll get this wrapped up in 5 minutes and move on to the third test. Yeah,
it's incredible. Like, you watch a day of the cricket and you're like, wow, so much is going on. You're watching Bangladesh versus Zimbabwe, and it's like, oh yeah, Bangladesh went from 100 for 1 for 350 for 2 in the day. That's not a very exciting day. Here, it's just all kicking off, and every single day there is so much to break down.
Yeah, 100%. And let's not forget the most important thing. The first two tests has been compelling, absolutely compelling cricket. You've not wanted to miss any of it. If I've not been in front of the telly, I've been listening to it. It is just compelling cricket. It's properly set up now as well for, as you predicted last week, Rob, a 3-2 England win in this series. No doubt whatsoever in our minds. And I cannot believe you've not mentioned the fact that I'm wearing this horrific green and gold. We need some sponsorship off VB. Actually, I can see the logo coming in.
So Rich is wearing his Australian top, and I think that's him with the white flag kind of throwing it in, going, "You 2-0 up, the series is gone."
No, at the end of the last pod, basically I said, if England lose this second test, I will dig out the Boonie Army VB Aussie shirt that was a freebie in, I think from Coogee or something like that when I was over there. And I'll wear it. And I'm a man of my word, Rob. I will wear this. And that's why I'm wearing it today. Hopefully I will not have to wear it in the third test.
Yeah, I sincerely hope you don't have to, because we are going to see one of the greatest series of all time, which you're already witnessing, but we're going to see the greatest comeback of all time. They beat New Zealand 3-0. They beat Pakistan 3-0, and they're about to go and beat Australia 3-2. So believe it. Hi, Australian cricket fans. Welcome to the Non-Biased Cricket Podcast, hosted by two very English fans. So, Rich, break down the 5 days for us. Talk us through the game, and then we're going to break down so much of what has gone on.
Yeah, so, well, we'll just quickly look at it. We're not going to go through the scorecard, but Australia started up, didn't they? 416. They were put into bat by England. A brave decision by Stokes, but the conditions looked like it was all about bowling first at Lords. It didn't go to plan. 416 is a pretty woeful effort from England, a great effort from Australia. They didn't have the best conditions throughout the game, it seemed. So fair play to them in that respect. England followed up with 3-2-5, which was, on paper, not too bad, but when you dig into it and realise that we were 188 for 1 and then 188 for 2, it's not good enough. 3-2-5 as a response with that deficit of about 90 runs. 279 in Australia's second innings, which then set a target of 371 for England, which we had no chance, clearly. Absolutely no chance. And then Ben Stokes, Sir Ben Stokes, nearly did it. Was it 155 in the end he got? Just a sensational innings from him off 214 balls that really got us close. But fell short in the end, 3-2-7 all out. Steve Smith got man of the match through, he was given man of the match, I was about to say through Quick Info, but he was man of the match on field as well, wasn't he? A brilliant innings in the first innings for him. It was all about that first day, wasn't it? Those conditions, the green top, the little bit of cloud cover or whatnot. It's just frustrating that England didn't come out. Once you've decided, you've picked the team with 4 seamers the day before, you've basically said, we are going to bowl first if we win the toss. Look how positive we are. Then they win the toss. Then they bowl first. Australia have been preparing for the day or so beforehand for England bowling first. And then they just go, okay, I'm just going to put the ball there and I'll take wickets. It didn't go to plan at all.
No, it was a strange one because they were on and off a few times. And I think it was the general perceived attitude from the England team, as opposed to Australia kind of front foot in the game, that was the problem. So when they went off, Australia, Warner, Khawaja were stood on the boundary waiting to come back out, ready for the umpires, ready for everyone. But England just nowhere near. They were just Stokes was up on the on the balcony,
Yeah.
and other players were just mishing around, and we were following them out. We're supposed to be the ones trying to get back into the contest. We need to show a bit of leadership and a bit of fight and determination, and the body language and energy you put into it was just lacking on that first day completely.
Yeah, 100%. It was only really until Josh Tong got into the field, wasn't it? Got into the attack, where England looked a bit more threatening and a bit more lively. It's got to be said, we don't ever, as a rule, criticise a bloke like Jimmy Anderson. But Jimmy Anderson, I'm not putting it all on him, but Jimmy Anderson, he bowled okay, but he just hasn't looked anything like the Jimmy Anderson we need in this series so far. Robinson's he's been okay. Broad, he's been probably the main man so far, but Josh Tong was the one, the real threatening piece of the attack. Obviously not going with a spinner either, but you wouldn't be really using one on the first day. But obviously that's not ideal. So England just didn't look at it at all on that first day.
It's a strange one with Jimmy, mate. Like, he's normally the guy at the front, and he hates conceding runs, ultra competitive sort of guy. And it's just like it just wasn't clicking at all. And that carried on into the field. He dropped 2 catches, one hard, one. Jimmy Anderson's got a great set of hands. You'd fully expect him to go and take. Broad was the one for me who I thought looked dangerous and had some really good spells thrown in. Robinson had a single good spell thrown in, but there's so much talk of it being 78, 80 mile an hour. And I'm like, that's all right. It's just everyone can't be the same. And you saw the disparity between the average speed of deliveries. Anderson and Broad was, I think, 81. They were averaging in speed. Robinson was about 79 and Josh Tong was about 86, 87. But then Cummins and Stark, all these guys are 87, 89, like average speed. You've got Stark breaking the 90 barrier time and time again. It's unfortunately the position we're in, but it's a good position we're in because we've got guys of huge class. They're just very samey.
Yeah, absolutely. And just credit needs to go to the likes of Usman Khawaja in the first season as well. He only got 17, but he batted 70 deliveries. He really did make sure that they didn't lose those early wickets alongside Warner, who batted well.
You're telling me they put a price on their wicket?
Yes, they did in their first innings, which maybe did England, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, Warner batted well, didn't he? Steve Smith, fair play to him, got 110. He's got his name up on the board again. Thought Travis Head batted well again without going on, but he did really, really well. Yeah, it was just one of those innings, wasn't it? 416. It could have been a lot more. Let's put it that way. England did recover quite well the second half of that first innings to come back. And then England made an absolute brilliant start, didn't they? Ben Duckett, 98 for him, gutted. We all said, just relax, everybody, about Ben Duckett after that first test. It wasn't the shots he was playing. It was more the way he was carrying himself when he was batting that first test. He looked a bit overwhelmed. Proper first test in England, no disrespect to Ireland. And it was a real big moment, first Ashes test for him as well. He's still a young player in test match cricket. He might be, what is he now, 26 to 28? I can't remember, something like that. But he's not an experienced player at test level. He was speaking at one point, wasn't he, about the short ball barrage. And he was saying he's never, ever faced that in county cricket before. So he had to adapt to how he can play. So overnight, he's basically teaching himself and learning, right, what's my approach? How am I going to do this? Maybe you could say he could have prepared better for that. But I don't think we expected a bumpathon in this game at any point until, fair play to Pat Cummins in Australia. They came up with a tactic that did confuse England. And that first innings, it made a good start. Crawley batted okay, 48, Duckett. A lot of jug avoidance going on here, Rob. 98 Duckett. Harry Brook, 50. That was a weird innings. Harry Brook, he seemed to try and slog everything. But when that short ball came, some players tried to just duck and weave a little bit. But others just decided they wanted to try and smack every single ball that came their way. And that wins the Dumb Cricket Award this week. Last week, it was the dancing down the track, giving your wickets away needlessly, Nathan Lyon in particular, bowling no balls far too much, which happened again. This week, it was trying to smack everything when they're doing to short ball. Australians have already played 2 test matches ahead of this one. They had the World Test Championship, then the first test. This is their third outing. This could have been an opportunity for England to go, do you know what? We want to be positive. We want to tick the scoreboard over, but we want to also grind these Aussie seamers into the ground. Cummins is going to play all 5 tests. More than likely, one of the others is going to play the remainder of the test and Hazelwood and start. They're not going to rotate massively. That was a chance to really go, do you know what? Do that for as long as you want, lads. And when you're done, when you're looking knackered, we're going to smack you all over the park, especially because by that point, Nathan Lyon, his calf had pretty much exploded. know your pain, Nathan. That there was just no way that Australia could have come back in this test match if we'd have batted a little bit more sensibly in that first innings and taken advantage and also had an impact going forward with grinding their bowlers down.
Yeah, some of the, I saw this, the intent's good and the execution was poor. It was premeditated. That's the thing. Like Ollie Pope's, and he did it when he scored that fantastic century in the County Championship. He was just walking across and smacking the ball.
Yeah.
It was at the wrong end of the wicket to do it. And plus, it was the wrong delivery. It was short, yes, but it was like half a yard outside off stump. So by the time he got there, he's actually fended it. And not even on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. He's actually fending it from over here. So you've lost heaps of your power before you can actually try and do it. So it was premeditated to the wrong delivery because it's the line that counts if you're trying to play the hook shot. One, it's going to be short. But two, I thought the Aussies nailed their length really well. There's some good stats from CricViz. Basically, any ball above 1.8 metres in height got the wickets. Anything shorter than that didn't.
Yeah.
So Australia bowled a really good length. They had periods where they bowled kind of half trackers where it's getting up around like waist height, and they're the ones that you can get on top of, and Duckett was getting on top of really well. But anything else than that was actually quite dangerous. Two-pace pitch, not quite coming onto the bat very well, but it's more, Bazball was built on trying to win games of cricket and trying to be entertaining about it. And I doubled down on Bazball in the last podcast as 50 comments keep telling me I'm wrong. I'm tripling down on Bazball.
God.
Bazball needs to have a little bit of nous about it.
Yes.
And I think Ben Stokes offered what Bazball is all about.
Yes.
There are times to accelerate. And we did it really well last year. We didn't blitz through India, New Zealand, and all these teams scoring 5 and over. We played the game. There's periods that's hard, and you've got to ride it out. And Stokes did that. Came in the first innings, saw out the night. And then second innings, it was when Bairstow went that he started to go. And then once they got within a certain range, he was like, I've got to be here at the end. There's a chance. And he started to adapt his game again. And it's that experience level that's potentially missing from a couple of the younger players. And I think the disappointing one in there, and he'll know it, is Joe Root. Joe Root is the best batter in the world. There's him and Steve Smith. Babar Azam, maybe 3. Kane Williamson 4, Virat Kohli's in the top 10 these days, maybe. But he is way too good a player to get out pulling to someone that's 40, 50 yards away from the bat. He should not be throwing his wicket away like that. Because if you think back to the team last year, you had a Ben Stokes in the middle. You had a Joe Root in the middle. You had more of that stability type role rather than everyone being ultra cavalier about their approach. So it's a learning thing in progress. They're just learning on the job against the best team in the world and the best bowling attack that they've ever faced. Like you said about Duckett, they're thinking on the job and working out how to do it. And there just can't be enough credit put on this Australian team and the data analysts and everyone that's worked with them that have come up with these game plans. First test match, it worked. They won the game. England took all the chances, but Australia still won the game. And second one here, they came up with a short ball tactic. They executed it superbly. And it was because of that they were able to go on and win the game. Because we've just thrown away the big wickets before going into the start of day 3.
Yeah, the first point, really pick up on what you just said there, is the length of delivery, isn't it? It's not complicated. If you're playing the ball below your eyes, you've got a level of control. As soon as that ball is pretty much going to be above your eyes, you're out of control. And with the fields they were setting, with how many people were behind the bat, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be top edging. You're not going to be keeping it down. Duckett did it brilliantly initially of keeping it down, but then he obviously got that one that just raised up a little bit on him. And he's such a tiny man that he was going to eventually get one that did do a little bit. This is a great opportunity to speak about the Australian bowlers as well, not just their plans. Mitchell Starc, when the first innings bowling, looked very ordinary initially. Yes, he's got nice pace, tall guy, looks great at the crease, but he just wasn't bowling good areas. But when they went to this short stuff, it suddenly freed him up. He knew what he needed to do, and he was away. And that got him going for the rest of the test match. I thought he was really, really good with the ball. Talking to Joe Root, 28 run test match. First innings, he gets done by the short ball, like you say. But second innings, Pat Cummins did him with a 1-2, didn't he? First ball, short ball, pinned him. Ooh, didn't see that coming. Sort of turned his head away, didn't he? Got one. Next ball, his glove through. It kind of shook him up a little bit. And to make Joe Root look that uncertain at the crease was exceptional. And Pat Cummins over the game was just Mr. Consistent again, wasn't he, with the ball? Stark got more and more England batters in trouble. Let's put it that way as the game went on. Hazelwood looked steady. But yeah, just overall, I think Australian bowlers just bowled really well. But the frustrating part for me is that England allowed them to be able to continue with this short stuff over much longer periods than they needed to, with the dismissals of, for example, obviously Duckett was out that where Harry Brook just frustrated the life out of me because he never looked in, even though he was scoring at a good rate. So just there's question marks there, isn't there? Just talking of short stuff though, Australian batters didn't play it particularly well either. When England decided to have a go in the second innings.
Oh, you don't judge a pitch and all this before you've seen both teams bat on it. Don't judge the pitch until you've seen both teams play the short ball on it. And it's because it was really difficult to play on that wicket.
Yeah, exactly. And tracks, I don't want to go bogged down on the tracks again, but we said before this one, just because it's going to look like a green top doesn't mean it is. They're just leaving a lot of grass and keeping it green to start the test match because there hasn't been a lot of rain around. And as we expected, it was quite dry underneath. So it just looked like a greener deck. It's probably like a Kiwi deck. That it wasn't going to seem all over the place. It just looked it a little bit more. And it was almost trying to protect the surface over the 5 days. So, you know, whether England could have been a little bit brighter up front and just thought about the conditions a little bit more. But you can't blame them for bowling first. It was just the execution.
We just didn't bowl as well as Australia. No. And Australia really put a weight on their wickets. For us, our banker is definitely Jimmy. Jimmy's not been at his best. He's got maybe 4 wickets at about 80 in the series. And CricViz was saying that his average seam movement in England is 0.8 degrees year on year, every single year. And this year it's down 25%. Yeah. So something's obviously not clicking at all for him. And he looks frustrated. His body language looks frustrated. And he's such an experienced soul for this team that you sometimes worry how much that translates into other players.
Yeah, just a quick one on Jimmy as well. It's 3 wickets, I think it is. I just had a quick scan. But the other thing is he's dropped 2 pretty much straight at him catches. They were hit well both times. But I'm not taking the mick because we're similar age to Jimmy Anderson. But you get to a certain age and suddenly you're not judging things quite as well as you used to. And he took an absolute belter on the head, didn't he, when he was batting? He kept dancing down the track and that absolutely smacked into the side of his head. It was one of those
most 62 hits to the gloves, body or head in this test. It's the most on ball-by-ball data since 2006.
You can't fault some of the intent and the effort and application from some of the England guys, especially down the order. I thought Brody was an absolute machine in that second innings, but we'll get on to that more in a minute. Just overall, a little bit of that first innings, a lot of people getting out once they got in or just starting to get in, but it was difficult. Obviously, coming into when that short ball stuff started, it was difficult to come to the crease and start, which is what was frustrating when people who were in were getting out. Ben Duckett had an exceptional test match in many ways. But that first innings, it was so frustrating because it just opened the door to Australia. And then you're suddenly asking people like Joe Root to start whilst they're bouncing you. And he couldn't time a thing, could he? So it was really, really difficult. But overall, really good bowling display from England. Second innings, Australia, a frustrating one again, wasn't it? At Khawaja, we allowed Khawaja to bat another 187 deliveries. We cannot keep allowing Usman Khawaja to be such a pivotal part of this batting lineup. Brilliant for Australia and massive credit to him for doing it. But first test, we missed opportunities. We could have got him early, certainly in the second inning. And we've got to get a better plan to him. We seem to be so preoccupied by what we can and can't do to David Warner that we've sort of forgot about what we can do to Khawaja. Maybe we're thinking about everyone else. They were the key men and they didn't plan enough or plot enough for Khawaja. And he is absolutely making England pay even.
Oh, he's just happy at the crease, isn't he? He finds a little bubble. He sits in it. He knows the lines. And the thing for me with Khawaja, when you bowl in that over the wicket line and you get the swing away, that's when you get him nicking off. That's time and time again. That's kind of how he gets out. Yeah. But if we're not moving the ball, we're not really causing him many problems, to be honest. And he's just accumulating runs, and you just feel there's probably a big score somewhere along the lines to come for him. Same for Marnus. I feel like Marnus has got a big score in him around the corner as well.
Yeah, it could well be, and it's worrying signs, isn't it? It's a really solid looking batting card at the minute for Australia, that top 5 in particular. Warner looked pretty good again. It's disappointing for him. Obviously, he didn't get himself up to 3 figures at Lords. This is probably, I think this is his long farewell tour now, isn't it? The Ashes, and then there's some sort of cricket over in Australia by the time their summer comes around, and then that's pretty much him done by all accounts. You're right, that middle order, Labuschagne and Smith just look pretty good, don't they? I love some of the shots. Was it one of Steve Smith trying to play a shot? He was nearly off the cut strip, wasn't he? Trying to slap something into the ground. Bizarre. Just some of this cricket's been weird as. Again, but England, I thought in that second innings bowled really well. They executed really well. Broady 4 for 65, really got himself fired up. Josh Tong again 2 for 53. Ollie Robinson 2 for 48. Ollie Robinson.
Short balls, mate. Short balls. 50 overs of short balls, and 98% of the balls were short in that 50 over period. Like, the game plan was good. It's following what Australia had done, and it's worked. But if it wasn't the Ashes, is that entertaining cricket?
Oh, no. As a novelty for a little while, it's quite amusing to see it. It's like when Stokes used to bowl a spell, suddenly a 10 over spell of short stuff, just to try and shake things up. But you don't want to be watching this for Lord knows how long, do you? So
I hope this isn't the future of Test cricket. Test cricket has got to evolve to be able to deal with more aggressive play. Yeah. And to do that, you're probably going to see more and more T20 type activities or one-day middle over activities going on, of having heaps of players back. And I like, for how much I enjoyed this game, the worry is that every Test match in the future, when someone's batting well, is that you bowl short and you have 9 players on the boundary and they go at 1 and over.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, there's all this talk around spirit of the game. I feel having every single player on the boundary is absolutely just like, who are you trying to make happy out of that? Yeah, I know you're trying to get the wicket. I know you're playing the game because you won and you did it really well. But who wants to see that? Every single player on the boundary.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing, isn't it? We see it in club cricket. As a club, I've played for over the years. It's not something we've ever done. You push players back, but you'll never have 9 fielders on the ropes. But we've played against certain teams, and I won't mention them because it's not that important to everybody here. But we've played as soon as you're chasing a score, they start with a number of men back, and as soon as you get halfway through the innings, they have everyone back. I played in a game a few years ago where I was batting with number 11, trying to go and win a game, and they literally had 9 players back for about 10 overs at the end of the game. And that was for both players pretty much. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Got to talk about Nathan Lyon, mate. Absolute heroic coming back into bat.
Yeah. I was out a lot of the day on Saturday, but I caught up on the highlights and listened to a fair bit, and I did not expect him to bat at all. I said to you before, I've had a calf explosion. Literally heard it go pop and had to come and bat the last over of a game. And I could barely walk to the square, let alone actually try and play a shot. Forward defensive, no chance. It was everything like going back. What absolute hero. I mean, this series, I mean, he was in his 100th consecutive Test match. Has he got to the 500 wicket mark yet? Have a little look at that while we're talking about it. Which is wounded. It's not like he's finished, is it? But it's going to take a while for him to come back on this one, and it's just so disappointing that he couldn't. He's not going to be able to complete the series. But the minerals of this man, Rob, we all need to just stand up and show some respect to Nathan Lyon. He's been brilliant bowling this series, and to show what he did and to come and hang out for another 13 deliveries. In the end, it didn't make the difference. It wasn't the difference in the game, but it could easily have been the difference in the game.
Yeah, I think
another 15, 20 runs.
Difference. Like, if you're chasing, when England needed 100, and I think they added about 25 runs between his partnership with Stark, I think it was. That's a big difference. Like, if Stokes got out when we needed about 75 to win, if that was down on 50, again, it's a completely different contest. So it does. Yeah. The thing that it reminded me of, and it's not the same, but I get emotional at sport. I find sport emotional, and I find moments of adversity quite emotional in sport as well. And the one that always gets me is Derek Redmond in the 92 Olympics. British sprinter going round, pulls a hammy, his dad comes on and carries him over the line. And I watched that on YouTube and I'm just bawling my eyes out. And it gave me the same sort of feels around this, where it's someone putting the body on the line for the greater good of the team. You could say Stuart Broad was doing exactly the same when he was just stood there getting peppered for however many balls he did. But this was absolutely exceptional, Nathan Lyon.
Yeah, massive credit to him. Look, this whole series is theatre. This whole series, it's pantomime. For those of you know in England, it's villains, it's booing, it's all the rest of it. Some of the booing I can do without, to be honest with you. It's boring me a little bit now. But that's what it's all about. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit disparagingly about some Australian cricketers. Likewise, we'll get it back from Aussies. And it's the same over there. And you know, it's just the way this series is. Everyone gets built up and it's all a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We hope that there is a mutual respect over it all. And certainly from our point of view, Nathan Lyon is an unbelievable cricketer. And this series will be worse for him missing the final 3 test matches. We'll go into replacements and stuff in a little while before we wrap this up. But yeah, so Australia got to 279, didn't they? I thought it was a much better effort from England with the ball. Got it into position where there's a chance. 3-7-1. Even though I'm thinking we've got a chance, we've absolutely got a chance. And then you start seeing the wickets tumbling as we reply. And we were very, very quickly, wasn't we? 13 for 2 and then 41 for 3, 45 for 4. That is not the start anybody wants to see ever in any chase. Even if you're chasing 100, that is not a good start. England just looked poor. I mean, Harry Brook got an absolute jaffer from Cummins. Cummins was brilliant at the start of the second innings. Got Root as well, didn't he? 2 in the over for him. Start looked pretty good as well. Zach Crawley strangled down the leg side. That was a bit of a disappointing one. But the Root and Brook dismissal in particular were pretty good, as was the Ollie Pope ball from start.
The start dismissal to Pope was outstanding.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
The two balls that swung the most in the contest was the one that got Crawley nicked down the leg side and the one that cleaned Pope up. Yeah,
I know. I'd rather keep watching the Pope one. So Pope is a bit of a frustration. I mean, we should mention as well, you know, he damaged his shoulder again, didn't he? He's had history of that, but I think this is a different shoulder now. But he struggled, so he didn't really field much in the game. It's no surprise that he had a pretty disjointed game overall. He just didn't really feel part of things, I'd imagine. And with the bat as well, it just didn't really happen. We'll see if he's fit to go. There's a question mark over him. This is back-to-back tests. So we're not sure if he's going to be fit to play. And if he doesn't, the only other batter in the squad is Dan Lawrence. So we could be seeing a bit of Dan Lawrence coming up very, very quickly. Let's hope his technique is in check. But England, so from that point, Ben Duckett was obviously there. He was batting along pretty well. And he was joined by Stokes at that point. But before we go on and really talk about that final day, we have a big issue with Ben Duckett and a potential dismissal, Rob. Mitchell Starc got one up fielding down at fine leg, running round, took a really good catch, both hands under it. And then he goes to the ground and he decides to try and rub the ground with the ball as he goes to the ground. And then there's outrage that's a catch. Rob.
What do you think, out or not out?
I don't think it's out. I've been brought up from a very young age that if the ball hits the ground as you're completing a catch, it's not out. It's not a catch. If you ever try and take a catch, you try and go down with your hand to the ground first. You can't put both hands out to try and steady yourself. How many catches have you seen over the years where someone looks like they're taking a really good catch and then they hit the ground with their hand and the ball pops out? You cannot use the ground to control yourself as you're going to ground, surely, and just rub the ball along the ground. I think it's a really simple decision. He had absolute control of the ball in his hands, but as he's still completing the catch, to use an NFL term almost, and going to ground, controlling his body, the ball was then controlled in, if you like, even more by rubbing it along the ground. If this was an England catch, I'd be saying the same thing. I don't see why this is... We had Pat Cummins after the game. We'll talk about, obviously, the run-out issue, or the stumping, in a minute with Bairstow. But they had a false equivalency on this one. It's like, they applied the rules of the game in this one, like they did with the Mitchell Starc catch. No, they're not the same thing. They're absolutely, in some ways, they're just not the same thing. Or don't look at them as the same thing. Look at them as two individual moments. That's a better way of saying it, actually. And the Mitchell Starc thing was clearly he used the ground to control himself as he went to ground. Ball could easily have popped out if he put his hand the other way around.
I think the problem with it is the laws offer ambiguity, and everyone's got a different
100%
take on
if it
what
hits
it
the ground
means.
Yeah.
Erasmus came in and did a really good talk.
Yes.
I think on the start of day 5.
Yes, he did.
Like you were saying, completing the catch. If he'd gone into the rope, it would have been 4 or 6. So he hadn't completed the catch. Although he had the ball, he hadn't completed it. So to me, I looked at it and I went, that's not out. But I also looked at it and said, I've seen that heaps of time in cricket and it's been given out, which is the problem. Which is the problem, that people take it in different ways. And because it wasn't, he did catch it and then rub the ball. If it was more like a one fluid motion, everyone would just go, well, that's definitely not a catch. But because it's two separate things, it created issues. And that's why in club cricket, you'll see it happen and it'll always be out.
I'll be honest with you. I don't think I don't remember an obvious occasion where I've seen that, where someone's taken a catch and then put their hands down with the ball running along the ground. I've seen people take catches. Yeah, I mean, but I can't imagine it's a common thing. People are taught from a young age.
No, interesting. It's not common, but I can remember it happening about 20 years ago against Calverton.
All right, okay, so that's a one-off. So you should.
It is, but it weirdly sticks in my mind a lot.
Yeah,
because I was batting, hit the ball out to probably Cow, and guy caught it and did that with the ball, and everyone's running off celebrating, and I was like 14, 15 years old, maybe a bit older, maybe it was 25 years ago. And I was like, oh, that's not out. Like the ball hit the ground and no one listened to me, although I was young. No one listened to me because they just took it that it was out, but he blatantly put the ball down.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, look, I'm not trying to be, let's be really sensationalist here. I just don't think it was a catch. It's just really simple. I think Stark has to be smarter than that. I think he has to make sure if he's going to ground, put your hand one hand down that doesn't have the ball, and then the other one, keep the ball off the grass. Simple as that, and it's a catch. It's a good effort as well. And we'll obviously get onto the Bairstow thing earlier, but I don't like this thing where because one thing happened, we then have to compare it to the other one. Let's just keep it separate. And there's going to be some grey area and nuance in, I think, hopefully what we talk about with the Bairstow incident as well. So let's not kind of forget that point. So England, go on.
I was going to say, Bairstow, question mark.
Well, I think we need to talk a bit more about Ben Duckett and Stokes to begin with, because I thought Duckett was exceptional. And he deserves a bit much. At 83, again, so disappointing that he got out when he did. First innings of 98, 83 in this one. He looked so calm. It was like night and day with the way he behaved at the crease in this test match. And just to reiterate that point earlier, this is what frustrates me sometimes with cricket fans. We're all excitable in the Ashes, but first Ashes test, and batting on the first morning, Duckett looked a bit unsure. And then suddenly, Duckett's not good enough. Duckett's not going to be able to cope with this. He can't do that. He was exceptional. Apart from Stokes, he was by far the best England batter in this game. And I think he just deserves a bit of credit, let's say, and make sure everyone is giving him it.
Yep, definitely. He was class. He did a really good chat. Might have been Friday morning, and he spoke about a change in approach, given the extra pace, rather than trying to hit the ball behind square. He was talking about start off hitting it straight and then adapt. And that works really well for this game. So, yeah, huge kudos to him. Yeah, absolutely. So we're moving on to Bairstow now, aren't we? We can't hide away from it any longer. We have to get on to it. I'm uncomfortable with this conversation in some ways because my initial reaction, again, when I saw this, I'd come back in from a little quick walk and it was like, what's going on? And I heard about it. I was thinking, oh, my God, this is going to be outrageous. This is going to be disgraceful. And then I saw the replay initially, and I think the biggest point about this whole issue is that it was the last ball of the over. If this was just any old ball in the over, I kind of don't think there's an issue. I know England have done this before. I know Bairstow has tried this before. I know in club games, keepers I play with, you probably see it once every week if someone's shuffling out the crease or doing something. So the two big things really is it's the last ball of the over, and Bairstow is not just batting out of his crease. He's batted in his crease, and then he's basically had his little scratch, and then he's left his crease, not attempting a run or anything else like that. So they're the two things to keep in mind. But to Carey's credit, I think is the right way of saying it, it was pretty much as soon as that ball hit his gloves, he was in the action of throwing it. So he hadn't stopped, had he? He hadn't taken a moment and then decided to roll it. So my only issue really is that the umpires, without probably saying over, both of them, you see on the replays, had started to make their way to where they were going. Should the umpires have said over straight away? Probably. But the ball was already in motion by that time, wasn't it? So
it's a real grey area, this one is. And I think with probably where we should be is probably in between the two views. Stokes in England, I think there's a lot of emotion, and they use that emotion probably to try and fuel them in this chase. And they'll probably try and use this emotion going forward as well to really put a bit more of a spike in this series. But I don't see a massive issue with it, other than it was the end of the over and the umpires had started moving, and Bairstow's thinking, right, that's the end of the over, I'm on the way.
It was just out. It was out. It's happened before. Bairstow tried it in the second innings or first innings of the game.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching Bairstow keep for Yorkshire back on county championship about 6 years ago, maybe. Behind the stumps, he faked that the ball had been missed and gone down. The guy started to run. He had the ball in his hand and ran him out. That, to me, is worse than what's gone on here. So it's just one of them. It's happened. By the laws of the game, it is out. If it's how you want to accept it, it's up to you. I would be annoyed if that happened against my team towards the end of a game or in a big moment. But there's not a lot you can do. But it did waken up the Lord's crowd. Holy moly.
Yeah, and do you know what? After the first day, I made a note that I want to talk about Lords, and to the point of saying it's about time Lords was removed a test every year, because the crowd is pathetic. What England needed on that first day was some backing by the crowd to get them going, get them out of themselves a little bit. Obviously, Barmy Army aren't allowed. They're not allowed to have an official area and all that sort of nonsense at Lords. There's too rowdy, apparently, Rob, which we'll get onto rowdiness in a moment. We can't have the Oiks being rowdy, can we? So Lords as a venue is an unbelievable place. But, geez, we need a bit more from them. But then we did get that on the fifth day. Now, like I say, this pantomime villain booing, we've had it in the first two tests, like for when players are coming out or like Steve Smith's coming out. It's like, come on, get over it. I'm bored of boos. It's a bit pathetic, really. If you want to get stuck into blokes, get stuck into them like they do in Australia. They certainly don't hold back. You don't worry about the booze over there. It's just full-on diatribe of abuse. Sometimes, not always. I appreciate that. But that fifth day, when it really did get going, same old Aussies always cheating. It got the atmosphere going. It got the theatre of it all going. I'm sure a lot of people, when they got home and looking again at the Carey thing, would be like, okay, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. It certainly wasn't cheating. It was maybe pushing the old spirit of the game to the boundary, to use a cricketism. But what I really did dislike was obviously when the players went through the long room and you've got all these poshos in their blazers and hats, a lot of old white men basically. In a week where we've had a report from the ECB of racism, sexism, and class issues in sport. We've got the pretty much the elite of society, if you want to call them, that's gobbing off basically, and it just didn't look good. It didn't look good, did it? It did not look good, and there's some going to be removed. And for a fact that if that was fans in the crowd behaving like that, they'd be kicked out immediately with no recourse for any discussion. And at the end of the game, I just want to quickly make one point as well. They were talking about the atmosphere, and Andrew Strauss made a point and said something along the lines. It sounded all innocent, but he's made that point of saying, "Oh, there's a lot of people in here that wouldn't usually be in Lords." Strauss, I don't know why he's trying to make me dislike him so much over the last few years, but he's really doing a damn good job of it. And that was one of the worst, most ridiculous comments I've heard, especially in light of that report coming out this week.
It was lazy, wasn't it? It was really lazy.
It was arrogant. It was elitist. It was all those things we need to remove from cricket, in England especially. And Strauss needs to have a long old think about himself. That was a wonderful test match for him and the foundation for his late wife. But that was a really clumsy at best. I'm just going to leave it at clumsy at best comment from him. And that didn't sit well with me at all.
Yeah, it was poor. One of the better quotes that came out of it was Stuart Broad basically kicking off about it all, saying, "This is all you're going to be remembered for."
I love Brody.
Kicking off to slip and saying it's one of the worst things I've seen on a cricket pitch.
Right, just quick on clarification. I'm going to love this point because I always do. Stuart Broad didn't nick off to slip. If Gill, who was the keeper? Haddon. If Haddon had took the catch, he nicked off to Haddon's gloves and Haddon deflected it to slip. It's a very important point, Australian cricket supporters.
Details.
Before you hammer Brody for that one. But yeah, he did middle it to Haddon, but he didn't middle it to slip.
How good was Stokes' knock?
One of the greats, mate. I mean, how the hell, when you're chasing 379, was it? I'm forgetting all this, what we're talking about, 371. How do you get to a point when you're 4 down for next to nothing? And then after, when you under 100 runs to win, you are the team that is expected to win. That is how good Ben Stokes is. It was unbelievable. After Bairstow went out, he spoke about he kept himself in the bubble. He didn't get really too involved. But then he realised the moment, okay, I might not have partners for very long here. I'm going. And when he went, it was just clean as, wasn't it? He obviously got a chance. But if you're batting in that way and chasing that score, you need a bit of luck on your side. You need to take a chance along the way. It was just sensational. The hitting was unbelievable. Just everything about it was amazing. Credit to Australia in the end. Don't like the 9 men on the field approach, but they really becalmed Stokes just before they got him out eventually. They took some shots and scoring areas away from him, and it just steadied him down, and to the point where he felt like, I think, that he had to get going again, and he couldn't quite get the foot back on the accelerator. So it was disappointing.
If it were bowling better, rather than bowling on the stumps, or just above the stumps, saying, you can hit this to the leg side. They really worked out which end. So he scored all his sixes hitting to one side, not the other, because the other side's longer. And then they really worked out the lines based on where they wanted to bowl to him, depending which stand he's hitting to. And fair play to the Aussies. They thought on the feet and came up with a really good resolution to the Stokes problem. But Stokes is one of the greats. And he keeps giving us moments that no one else has. World Cup finals, Ashes 2019, Ashes 2023. We may not have won, but this is one of the greatest innings of all time. If he had won this, he would have scored 200 not out to win a test on the 5th day at Lord's in the Ashes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a bit of a togetherness coming back again at this England setup. They've been a bit pulled apart by Australia. They've been presented with different challenges they've not come across before since this new hierarchy has come together of Key, McCullum and Stokes. So they're sort of scrambling to try and find ways to win games of cricket again. And I think that hopefully it's not too late, but hopefully, they'll have found, there can't be another tactic from Australia that's completely left field, surely, after, the first test of a little bit negative. I'm not saying it full on negative, but just a little bit, surprisingly, in the first test. And then the second test with a short ball. Hopefully they can get their heads together now and go, right, we know what they're going to throw at us now. This is how we need to play the game. Ben Stokes' innings was a perfect example of, we're trying to avoid the term today. I think we've done pretty well, but I'm going to say it one time, Bazball. They need to just be a little bit more sensible. And it's not just about gung-ho. The perfect example of bad Bazball for me was Harry Brook in that first innings, just trying to slap everything down the ground or trying to be positive about everything rather than just trying to pick and choose how he can score. And Stokes just gives them that belief. And looking at Stokes' innings, surely if he believes that he can do that on his own, surely his mates in the dressing room are going to go, right, actually, we can do better than this. That's our skipper. We spoke about this last summer. Ben Stokes was being over the top aggressive in some ways and getting a bit of flack for it of how he's batting. But that's because he wanted to demonstrate, this is how I want you to play. Don't worry how you get out. This is how I want you to play, to a point. But he showed again in that innings yesterday, you don't have to have your foot to the floor the whole innings. Pick and choose your times. Create a bit of chaos, as Aggers brilliantly described it on one day of the coverage. And then you can take advantage of it. You don't have to then keep going at a million miles an hour. Hit the boundaries, create the gaps, then work the gaps. Bring people back in, hit the boundaries. It sounds simple, but it's, there are ways of doing it. And I think Stokes showed that we can compete in this series. And Stokes, he's going to be the man to do it, isn't he? Forget about the ball. Just Stokes the batsman.
So the better team won. Second test, Aussies 2-0 up. Better teams win both tests.
Yeah, I think so. I think they deserve to have a 2-0. I think the series, it would have benefited this if there was a draw in there, and then that'll come back to the same old conversations for the first test, but we're not going back there. But 2-0, it is what it is, Rob. And England have got to come out absolutely guns blazing. Like I said, last summer, they won 3 tests on the bounce twice against pretty good opposition. Is that right? Sorry, 3 tests against New Zealand and then 3 against Pakistan? Mm-hmm. You're on mute. I can't hear.
Pakistan away, New Zealand and South Africa at home.
Sorry. Apologies. Rob's had a bit of a flu this week. He's a man. He's an absolute hero, getting off his deathbed to come and join us today. So he's trying to avoid the coughs too much. If people didn't know what was going on,
Yeah, keep muting myself throughout. Apologies if some of them come out. So, going into the third test, so England come back and win, but what changes do they make to their attack? Given you had Stokes bowling 12 overs straight through, you've got an out of form Jimmy Anderson, no Potts and no Rian Ahmed in the squad for the third test.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I mean, the first one potentially could be is we'll talk about the attack in 1 second, but Pope, like I said earlier, could be that he might miss out. Dan Lawrence might have to come in for him. That's the only change in the batting side, isn't it? Obviously, no change in keepers. Nothing's happening there yet. Bairstow did pretty well, so we're not going to go down that route again. So bowling-wise, I think Anderson and Robinson are the two men I'd say that are probably most at risk. But Broady's been exceptional. Broady's leading the attack at the moment. Which, fair play, he's an experienced player, but it's usually Jimmy's bowling attack, isn't it? Broady's in charge. Josh Tong looked by far the most threatening out of the other three. I think Jimmy needs to take a breather. He's had 2 tests on the bounce. He's not quite got going. I think he just needs a game out, just to kind of rest himself, reassess, refocus. And then what's the options? Wokes, Wood. It's got to be Wood, hasn't it? Wood comes in.
I don't think Wood's fit, apparently.
Still not ready fit. To go. I mean, if he's still in the squad, for me, if he's not fit, he shouldn't be in the squad anymore. They've just announced the squad.
You could always bring him in at a different point. You could have Jamie Overton in the squad, who's been in the he can bowl fast category.
But they've just reconfirmed the squad, haven't they? Literally yesterday, the 15, which is why they've said Potts and Ahmed's not involved, because obviously Moeen Ali, there's Ali's going to come in. So do you go with just Robinson and Anderson miss out? Do you bring in, if he's fit, do you bring in Wood and Ali?
I honestly don't think Wood will play, but I think Moeen Ali will come in for Jimmy. And I think that might be the change. And if Ollie Pope's not fit, if Dan Lawrence comes in, where's Dan Lawrence going to play? Is he going to fit in at number 3?
I'd struggle with that in my mind. I'd rather see him kick down the order to maybe 5 or something. But then Brooks not done. Do you know what? He scored quite a few runs in this series so far. And done it at a good pace, but he's just not looked overly convincing, maybe apart from his first knock. So I'm a little bit worried about him at the moment. But Australia, this team will make a lot of players look much more ordinary than they are. And we have to remember again, England 12 months ago, or just over 12 months ago, would not have even got close to this Australian side. It might be 2-0, but this has been 2 pretty close test matches. Very close test matches in a lot of ways. So we have to kind of just cool our jets a little bit with where our expectations are, and the fact that we are even giving Australia a game, we wouldn't have been doing this if this was the start of last summer.
No, if we stayed where we were in Silverwood World, the Ashes would have been over in probably 11 days of cricket. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it wouldn't have been close at all. So yeah, bring it on. That's all we can say for England. We'll see what happens. It's a bit weird, I think, that Potts and Ahmed was removed from the squad. Hopefully, Moeen's blisters, and we don't have to ever talk about Moeen Ali's blisters. Is right if they bring him back in. It does strengthen that tail again, which we need. Australia, Todd Murphy's going to come in, isn't he? He made his debut in India this winter, took about 15 wickets across the series, played pretty well. He's in the squad. It would surprise me if they don't call up some cover. Matt Kuhneman was the spinner that did well in a test match over the winter as well as backup to Murphy. And also he started the season probably the best spinner in county cricket, bowling for Durham. So I don't know if Aussie fans, if you're listening still, if you knew that, but Kuhneman did have a really good start of the summer. Don't know if he's fit because he had a bit of an injury concern as well. So, but Murphy's definitely going to be in. And I don't know if they make a change. It'd be interesting if they do, because obviously back-to-back tests. This will be their 4th test match in a row after playing the World Test Championship as well. So, do they maybe freshen up one of the bowlers, Rob?
I don't think they do. I think they like what they're doing with the height, the pace, and the bounce. I think they go without Boland and they stick with Hazelwood, who I thought might need a rest because he hadn't played any cricket before these 2 tests. But I think they might go on. There's going to be one change with the spinner coming in, but the seam bowlers stay unchanged.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Really, with the Lord's Test with that green top, we was all thinking Boland probably should have played in the 2nd test and Stark should have played in the 1st. Well, actually, they got the selections absolutely right, and we were completely wrong in that respect. So, fair play to the Aussie selectors. Last thing, kind of, I want to really talk about is just very briefly is this whole. I'm not going to get into it too much, but the spirit of the game and the way people have spoke about after the game. I know Brendan McCullum said about, I don't think we'll be having a beer with him anytime soon, or whatever he said. I think we just need to dismiss all that a little bit as just a bit of emotion at the end of a day and at the end of a test match. I think England are going to try and use that to their advantage now. But by the end of this series, it'll all be, pals and arms around each other and beers in the dressing room, I'm sure. But I think Australia coach, players, etc., they just need to also just remember what it's like for England in Australia before they get to, I can't believe they've done this. I can't believe how abusive the crowd has been. The long room, oh no, they said naughty words at us. They just need to have a little bit of a rethink because it's, it wasn't a great advert for cricket in some ways at Lord's yesterday, but come on now. Don't be too offended, Australia. Come on, remember what it's like when we go and visit you guys.
So we'll be back after the third test match. We can do a chat around it being 2-1 with 2 games to play. Can't wait for it. We're going to see you then. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.